This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe. Get a whole month free at Mubi.com/Karsten. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of What I Watched this month, April edition. I started this month with a Monkey Mondays movie, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, and I did not care for this one. Not even with low expectations did I come away happy about this. I'm usually someone who can lean into dumb fun, and this certainly commits to being dumb, but I couldn't get over how annoying it was, specifically everything with the humans. Listen, we can all tell that you guys, the people involved in making this movie, are aware how goofy and stupid it is. But take some of this seriously, please, for our sake. You can really only sell the goofiness if you take it seriously. If you just take the goofiness like it's nothing, it just comes off like a waste of time. It had all my least favorite traits in modern blockbusters, where every line has to be acknowledged, we have to be reminded every step of the way that we're watching a movie, and the escapism that something like this is supposed to have is then just completely lost. I will say some of the stuff with just monsters was great though. There was like a 20-minute sequence in here with no talking, just monkeys fighting and grunting, and seeing an entire spectacle like that played out with pretty much all CGI made me admire how far we've come with this technology. You guys know me, usually it is the complete opposite, but for some reason this one made me appreciate it. Even if it's a little muddy, it's undeniably impressive and kind of cool to think about. I had enough fun with this, but felt mostly disappointed by the end. Then I rewatched The Fellowship of the Ring. I have been wanting to revisit this for years, especially considering the only time I watched it, I didn't really get to sit with it. I had to just jump right into Two Towers. And I have to say, on its own, I still think this is the best Lord of the Rings movie. Just a masterfully crafted fantasy epic that delivers in everything you hope it does. You get the immaculate world building, the expertly choreographed battle sequences, such great performances all around, an emotional core that really comes alive in the end, and a soul, something that is deceptively hard to pull off in epics like this. Look at where that gets you. This is to me the dictionary definition of timeless. And I watched Monkey Man. I already kind of touched on this in my video for it, but I really enjoyed this. I think Dev Patel is an extremely talented director with a distinct voice and vision. He throws a lot at the wall in this film, a lot of risky choices too, and a lot of it sticks. I think whatever he makes next, assuming he gets to keep directing, will be something pretty special. Then I rewatched Dream Scenario. This held up about as much as I thought it would on a rewatch. I think the humor doesn't land as hard when you see it again. It's not the kind of comedy that continues to hit rewatch after rewatch, but I still think what Nick Cage does here is super underrated. I think this is one of my favorite Nick Cage performances. Truly one of the weirdest routes I've seen an actor go with a character, and the cinematography in this is really beautiful to look at. I could look at it all day. Christopher Borgli, honestly similar to Dev Patel, great director that I can't wait to see more of. It's just crazy how much this nosedives for the final 20 minutes. Then I watched Deliverance. This is one of those 70s classics I've never gotten around to until now, and hey, what a disturbing movie. I didn't know about that scene going into it. So for the first act, I was really enjoying just how cozy a lot of this was. Just four guys on a canoe trip, what could go wrong? But then it turns into a total nightmare that really stuck with me. I mean, just thinking about this film now, I feel kind of uneasy, and I really admire that about it. It's not dark at all on the surface. Even when watching it, I can look past the horrors and enjoy the scenery. But when you think about it again, when you look back at it, it's a deeply unsettling film with a weird aura surrounding it. The banjo music is used so creatively, I'll never listen to a banjo the same way again. Really enjoyed this one. Surprised I hadn't heard about it that much before this. Good movie. Then I watched Vampire. This is an early Carl Dreyer film that I mostly watched because I was reading Paul Schrader's Transcendental Style and Film book, an amazing book, by the way, probably one of the best movie books I've ever read. And yeah, I thought this was cool. Visually, it looked absolutely stunning. The use of shadows specifically is striking. I love cinematography that's often so obscure, it's hard to wrap my head around what exactly I'm looking at, and this is full of that abstract style. The story here didn't really do a ton for me, to be honest, and the transcendental I expected out of this didn't really work on me as well as I wanted it to, but still a beauty to look at. Then I watched The Chimp for my Monkey Mondays challenge, and it's funny, it cheered me up, nothing else to say. Then I rewatched The Host. Talk about a goddamn masterpiece. Once again, a monster movie that actually takes its creatures seriously. I am fully aware of this film's flaws. It has some of the most unfortunately dated CGI I've ever seen in a movie, but to me, all that stuff really works. I think you get the fun absurdity of a creature flick without losing hold of the devastating core that sits at the center of it. I see the tragedy at the heart of this no less affecting than the one at the heart of Parasite, to be honest. Sure, Parasite is way cleaner and a hell of a lot deeper than this, but I think this is one of the best creature flicks ever made. At least it's the only creature film that has moved me to tears by the end. Beautiful movie, underrated Bong Joon-ho movie in my opinion. Love it. Then I watched Ozu's The Only Son. Like the other Ozu films I've seen, this was a very special movie. This, more than the others that I've watched, seems to get to the characters' vulnerable sides a bit quicker, which was interesting to see. When talking about Ozu, I've come to realize that it's very hard to talk about the filmmaking itself, as he's so consistent about his approach. Everything I could say about this, I probably already said when talking about Late Spring a few years ago. But as far as story goes, I do think I resonated more with this one than I did Good Morning, if we're talking about stories revolving around children. The mother-son relationship here is not something I see a lot in film, weirdly, and this is one of the most touching examples of it out there. Then I rewatched The Martian. It's crazy to think that it's very possible that if a film like this came out today, it would be a flop, or at least a straight-to-streaming situation, which is crazy because this only really came out a few years ago, but the industry is in such a different place now that movies like this feel like such a rarity. But all that aside, talking about the actual movie for a second, I really enjoy this movie. It's a very straightforward and well-crafted drama. Usually space dramas lean more towards spectacle, and I often feel a bit cold by them for that reason. But Ridley Scott does take a much more human approach here compared to the other space films that were coming out around that time. And that's probably why this resonated with me more when I first saw it. Despite being pretty by the books in a lot of ways, The Martian is still fairly its own thing. I like this movie. I like it. Then I watched Kong Skull Island. This was obviously for my Monkey Mondays challenge, and I was also disappointed by this. Man, why does King Kong continue to disappoint me? Even the OG King Kong isn't like my favorite thing out there. Can someone please tell me what the King Kong movie is? I need to see it. Skull Island is an honorable attempt at blending popcorn adventure fun with gritty action, but it all feels too generic to ever really stand on its own. The characters are all extremely bland, and there's nothing particularly surprising about Kong. Usually when studios choose to bring these iconic monsters back, it's because we can do more with them, make them bigger, scarier, whatever. Give them a gauntlet. Fuck it. But Kong Skull Island really feels lost as to where it's supposed to go with this character. It's fun, it's watchable, but again, a bit disappointing. Then I rewatched the 2014 Godzilla. For some absurd reason, I had this at 0.5 stars on Letterboxd for a very long time. I do not know why. It's obviously not even close to being that bad, but I also wouldn't say it's that great. I do remember my biggest problem with this when I saw it in high school was that it went severely downhill after Bryan Cranston's out. Aaron Taylor Johnson, no offense, is so boring. Ugh, if the rumors are true that he ends up being the next James Bond, I'm gonna be mad. I'm gonna throw a fit. This goes from a devastating Godzilla flick with actual stakes, literally in like the first 5 minutes, to a pretty by-the-books action movie that got very stale after a while. Then I watched La Chimera, however you pronounce it. This is one of those movies I spent most of the movie trying to figure out. It's so bizarre, both narratively and stylistically, that I never really knew what I was watching or where it was going or even what the story really was. And then when the credits rolled, it felt as if everything fell into place for me, and I had just watched a fully realized piece of work about coping with loss. La Chimera is challenging in a lot of ways. It takes a lot of risks, but it's that quality that draws you in. There's like these weird odes to silent film, I want to say, where it's slightly sped up. Someone looks at the camera at one point. There's a lot of very weird comedy. There's just a mysterious aura surrounding the film. Even its more lighthearted moments have darker undertones, and I really loved that about it. The film does a masterful job at bringing you into the world of the protagonist, where everyone and everything is moving too fast, everything feels empty, and I found this to be a really affecting way of capturing that feeling of grief and feeling like something inside of you will always be missing. I'm being a little vague with how I talk about this one, but it's one of those films that you just can't really put into words. It has to be seen and it has to be felt. Then I watched Challengers. You know, I can't say I'm too surprised, but a lot of you are not too happy with me calling this my favorite of the year so far. I thought we were together on this, but as I sort of mentioned in the video, have you seen my taste? Not only is it a deliciously rich love story that manages to be both extremely sexy and funny, but it's also one of the most creatively directed films I've seen in a very long time, with some ridiculously fun performances. To me, it's an instant classic, and an entirely new type of film that people are going to refer back to for years. I stand by the fact that this is definitely my favorite thing I've seen this year. I loved this movie. Then I watched The Jungle Book for Monkey Mondays. I'll be honest, I kind of zoned in and out of this one. I saw this right after Challengers, which was yeah. As lovely as the animation and songs are, it's really not the most engaging film from this era of Disney. It's cute, but unless we're talking nostalgia, Jungle Book just has very little to offer as far as heart goes. in my opinion. Then I rewatched Stranger Than Paradise. To be completely honest, during this rewatch, I found a lot of what I was watching to be way emptier than I remember it being. I think it hit so hard the first time because it was one of my first introductions to early Jarmusch, and I've since seen him master this style in ways so much more interesting than whatever this is. But that is not at all to say I didn't still enjoy this, because if anything, I think that emptiness actually is a part of the film. Jim Jarmusch is an expert at capturing the isolating feel of rural America. You can be anyone here, but also what exactly is here to begin with. Again, I think he does this a lot better and a lot weirder in Mystery Train, Down by Law, even Patterson in some ways, but I still really appreciate this film. You thought I was going to say something bad, but no, I still really like it. Then I watched Tokyo Story in 35mm. Sitting in the theater for this 10 minutes before it started, I kept thinking how I was about to experience one of those rare feelings of seeing an all-time great for the first time. It felt like the first time I saw Vertigo or 2001 or The Godfather, just the feeling of watching an all-timer right in front of you. And even with those ridiculously high expectations, Tokyo Story still managed to blow me away. You have everything there is to love about Ozu here, the perfect frame composition, the transcendental style, but where I usually feel as though his films focus on one single relationship, Tokyo Story is able to get to the root of like 6 different relationships. There's even a character who comes up near the end of the movie who we don't really know that well at that point, but the film is so in the zone that you just immediately feel for him, and it's as if you're watching a real person. Keep in mind, I'm talking about a somewhat minor character near the end. Think about how the main characters feel. For as large as it comes off when you talk about it after the fact, Tokyo Story never loses sight of its simplicity. It comes off so effortless. The family dynamics are so natural. He makes it look easy, when in fact, this is years of working towards mastering this story, or I should say stories, in order to pull off what is a perfect culmination of all the themes he aimed to explore. It's just one of those perfect movies that exists on a wavelength separate from what I'm used to. I'll think about this one until the day I die. Then I finished the month with Civil War. There is so much I like about this, and there's also so much that really didn't work for me. I think Alex Garland has a knack for making really disturbing imagery. I saw this in Ex Machina, definitely Annihilation, and in some ways in Men. The final shot of this movie is so subtly nightmarish. For him to take a scene you're kind of waiting for the entire film and still make it something you don't really expect is super cool to me. I also nearly chewed off my entire hand from just how nail-biting some of these scenes were, specifically the incredibly performed Jesse Plemons scene. Jesus Christ. Kirsten Dunst and Kaylee Spaney both do an amazing job keeping his streak of getting amazing performances out of female leads. And conceptually, it's cool. I was certainly never bored. It's never predictable. I'm glad I watched it and that it exists. But hey, what exactly is the war here? I know that's not the point of the film, and everybody that critiques that part of it is just missing what Garland was actually saying. He's way more concerned with the people in the story and what it means to be a photojournalist. That's all great. I'm glad he went that route because it makes for a much more interesting movie, but I still expected, and dare I say craved, a little bit more context here. It's not even about being politically neutral that's the problem. It's about not being political at all, which really just watered down the intensity of what I was watching. I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, but similar to its hideous digital cinematography, I found the film to lack a richness that would have really given me something to chew on here. I felt frustrated because it never felt like the film really started. I felt like we never got into it, and then all of a sudden we had 30 minutes left. But still, this did have a handful of moments that I found really well executed, like the scene where they're all crouched and hiding from a guy shooting from inside a house. The idea that all that mattered in that moment was that someone was trying to kill them really made me come around to the simplistic approach the film takes. But as a whole, I wish this thing did a lot more. I still like Alex Garland. I think he has interesting ways of saying things. He makes me feel things very strongly, and for that I appreciate him. But honestly, the man just needs to lock in next time, because this felt extremely wishy-washy. Also, worst needle drops I've ever heard in a movie, maybe ever. I've been trying to figure out why those choices were made for days now, and I just can't figure it out. Was it an accident? And hey, that's what I watched this month. Thanks for watching. Go watch these films and form your own opinions, and if you're sitting there trying to figure out what to watch next month, well, you should check out this week's sponsor, Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service, a place to watch beautiful, interesting, and incredible cinema. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected by its team of curators. Discover the best of cinema at your fingertips, streaming anytime, anywhere. You guys know me, I love to laugh. And they have a lovely collection on there called Funny Haha, which includes lots of amazing comedies, whether you're looking for slapstick or art house subversion. You'll find at least a few films in this collection that'll tickle you. They even have Greener Grass in there, which longtime viewers of the channel will know is an all-timer for me. You can try Mubi free for 30 days at Mubi.com/Karsten. That's MUBI.com/Karsten for a whole month of amazing cinema for free.